Colombia, members of Congress for the right-wing Democratic Center Party have presented a bill to authorize mass possession of firearms. As Brazil's COVID-19 health crisis continues to escalate, with the Pan American Health Organization calling on leaders to take action, the new health minister has promised to rigorously follow far-right President Jair Bolsonaro's instructions. Tanzanian President John Magufuli has passed away at the age of 61 after more than 2 weeks of absence from public life. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Katrina Goss. We begin in Colombia, where members of Congress for the right-wing Democratic Center Party have presented a bill to authorize mass possession of firearms. The bill was presented by Congress members Maria Fernanda Cabal and Christian Garces. Senator Cabal described the initiative as a means for Colombians to defend themselves against the dangers they face. In a country that has been racked by decades of internal conflict and where violence continues despite the peace accord signed in 2016, experts have stressed that restrictions on the possession of firearms have been essential to lowering murder rates in recent years. In Ecuador, the two presidential candidates continued their campaign activities this Wednesday in the lead up to the second round vote to be held on April 11th. Andrés Arauz, representing the Progressive Union for Hope coalition, and former banker Guillermo Lasso of the centre-right alliance between his Creating Opportunities Party and the Social Christian Party, will have until April 8th to present their government proposals to the electorate. Both candidates held campaign activities to the south of the capital on Wednesday, where Andrés Arauz visited rural areas and proposed environmental policies. Meanwhile, Guillermo Lasso met with farmers' organisations in the area. In Chile, the Court of Constitutional Guarantees of San Bernardo has issued an arrest warrant against police officers Alexis Nera Chaparro, Victor Antonio Lastra and Henry Giovanni Cuellar, who are charged with inflicting severe injuries on Mario Acuña on October 23, 2019, during widespread anti-government protests. The defendants are to remain in custody as a precautionary measure for 100 days while the investigations continue.
We want to thank with all our heart to the public opinion that has supported us, that has pushed us, the professionals that support Mario, and above all, the Codecore group that are the lawyers that have taken this cause forward, the only ones that have always been present. From here, we want to tell you that there is 100 days of preventive detention to investigate and that we have faith in justice again. We will continue with all our strength with Mario, fighting to get ahead, and that justice is done for Mario Cuellar.
Peruvian Judge Maria de los Angeles Alvarez is this Wednesday evaluating whether to accept the request for 18 months of preventive detention for former President Martin Vizcarra in the framework of a corruption investigation. Due to the pandemic, the hearing will be held by video conference and attended by Judge Alvarez, the prosecutor leading the case, Herman Juarez, defendant Vizcarra and his lawyer. According to local media outlets, Prosecutor Juarez has testimonies from up to 5 people who claim to have been involved in the payment of alleged bribes to Vizcarra in exchange for public works contracts when he was governor of Moquegua from 2011 to 2014. Last week, the prosecutor's office requested preventive detention for 18 months as Vizcarra is presumed a flight risk and could work to obstruct justice. The former president also faces heavy scrutiny regarding the scandal surrounding unauthorized priority vaccination against COVID-19 for his relatives, friends and other government officials during his time in office. Also in Peru, transporters are continuing their national indefinite strike action in protest of an increase in fuel prices and operating costs. Several highways in the country remain blocked. The National Union of Transporters and Drivers are also protesting against the increase in toll prices, the authorization for informal taxis, among other demands. Sector workers have called on Congress and regional authorities to take action to prevent shortages in the domestic market due to the stoppage and roadblocks. Authorities of the Ministry of Transportation and Communications stated that the executive will provide answers to the proposals made by the union in a bid to stop the strike action. On Tuesday, President of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, appointed lawmaker for the Everybody's Front coalition, Martin Soria, as his new Minister of Justice, after the resignation of Marcela Losardo. Our correspondent, Carolina Silvestri, brings us more details on what the move means in the following report.
The main task of Minister Martin Soria will be to reactivate the federal judicial reform and the reform of the Public Prosecutor's Office in the National Congress, who a few days ago made his position clear in the Argentine parliament.
Let there be no mistake that lawfare in Argentina has lost its seat in the presidential palace, but it is still more alive than ever in some offices of the judiciary, in some offices of the Supreme Court or the federal courts. We need to work together, as President Alberto Fernandez asked us to, so that never again in Argentina is there a justice system that acts according to the political winds of the day.
The objective of the official and former national lawmaker of the Everybody's Front coalition is to recover the independence of the judicial branch, co-opted by the Macri government and powerful economic groups.
The meat grinder that they implemented in order to create that weekly agenda of political judicial news to tame anyone who opposed them and, at the same time, distract public opinion, while they plunge all Argentines into worse debt than under Videla and Martinez de Oz. There are also the meetings with the executive of the Clarín Group and the La Nación Daily, immediately after ruling that appeared on the covers of the newspaper to intimidate, to harass, to persecute. But they were wrong. They thought that the state was like their companies. They thought that they could do whatever they wanted, that they were not going to leave offices, and they ended up losing and left.
The news about the appointment of the new minister was welcomed by the Union of Judicial Workers.
Martin Soria was an affiliate of ours when he worked in the Federal Court of General Roca. I think that experience in the justice system should lead him to handle things as they should be handled, right? Today, judicial branch has many needs, and we are talking about structural needs to fulfill the mission given to it by the national constitution, which is to control the other branches of the state and to be the last guarantee of the common citizen. The problem of justice is when governments want to subordinate it to their interests, and there we get into complications. I hope that Martin will work in accordance with the dramatic situation that the judiciary is suffering today.
Union leader Julio Piumato warns that the problems Soria will face are multiple and urgent.
The reality is that 80% of judicial buildings, if they were private, would not be functioning. The computer management system is collapsed. There is a lack of courts, a lack of personnel, and there is a reality that goes beyond the issue of federal criminal justice. It is an all-round issue. So we as a union have a proposal. We hope he is receptive to it, to a strategic plan being drawn up that truly be a state policy on justice, and where we consider all aspects of justice to elaborate a plan that in a few years will allow us to have the judiciary of the nation as the third branch of the state.
Although Piumato does not agree with the reform proposed by the executive branch, he does agree with the Fernandez administration that the judiciary can never again be subordinated to other branches.
Brazil reported over 2,800 daily fatalities due to COVID-19 on Tuesday, double the number of deaths registered by the United States, which remains the nation most affected by the virus in the world. The latest data provided by the National Council of Health Secretaries brings the overall COVID-19 death toll to over 281,000. The contagion curve is also skyrocketing, with more than 74,000 new cases reported in 24 hours, bringing the total number to over 11.5 million. Hospital occupancy rates are more than 80%. In the midst of this crisis, far-right President Jair Bolsonaro has appointed the fourth health minister since the pandemic began, who's already promised to rigorously follow the president's instructions. And Brazil's new health minister, Marcelo Queiroga, has admitted that social distancing is necessary to contain the pandemic that's wreaking major havoc in the country, and called for unity to fight the virus. Such statements may seem common sense, but they represent a novelty in the government of far-right President Jair Bolsonaro, who has continuously downplayed the seriousness of the virus and failed to control its spread in the country. Even as the health crisis rages on, Bolsonaro continues to promote crowds, reject the use of masks and question the effectiveness of vaccines. Quiroga is his fourth health minister since the pandemic began, and while he's assured that he will make changes to the policy to fight COVID in the country, he's also vowed to follow the president's instructions. The director of the Pan-American Health Organization has warned of the escalating crisis in Brazil, where a record of over 2,800 COVID-19 deaths are recorded on Tuesday, stressing the need for leadership to halt the spread of the virus. Meanwhile, the organization has also noted it continues to recommend use of the AstraZeneca vaccine.
The situation in Brazil is a cautionary tale that keeping this virus under control requires continuous attention by public health authorities and leaders to protect people and health systems alike from the devastating impact of this virus.
PAHO recommends the continued use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine while the European cases are being investigated, and we do not anticipate any impact of this invention on distribution through the COVAX mechanism.
President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, said Wednesday the country's health authorities are still confident about using AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine.
Mexican medical specialists are working on it, and they are in communication with the World Health Organization. There is research in the world, and doubts are beginning to be cleared up, and the vaccine is authorized for use. We have already used thousands of AstraZeneca vaccines, and we haven't had any problems with the vaccine.
Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel has acknowledged a valuable contribution of the country's scientists in overcoming the challenges posed by COVID-19. The Cuban head of state emphasized that the country is developing the technology that will guarantee the substitution of imports after a working meeting with a team of scientists and researchers who are working on new equipment to face the pandemic. Cuba has continued to offer its internationalist cooperation throughout the pandemic, sending medical brigades to dozens of countries. Meanwhile, despite the huge limitations imposed by the US blockade, the country's scientists have developed 5 COVID-19 vaccine candidates, as well as other drugs to treat the disease. To date, Cuba has reported almost 63,000 cases and over 58,000 recoveries. And Cuba and Iran continue to evaluate the efficacy and safety of Cuban vaccine candidate Soberana 02. The two nations are making progress in the clinical trials of the drug, one of the 5 Cuban vaccine candidates created to fight the novel coronavirus. Cuba's Finlay Vaccine Institute and the Pasteur Institute of Iran signed an agreement on January 8th to carry out phase 3 clinical trials of the vaccine candidate. Despite both countries being subject to harsh US sanctions which severely limit their access to medicines, they've worked to develop their own vaccines and treatments in the face of the pandemic. Tanzanian President John Magufuli has passed away at the age of 61 after more than a 2-week absence from public life. Vice President Samia Suluhu made the announcement on state television, informing that the president had passed away due to a heart condition. President Magufuli had not made any public appearances since February 27th, but appeared in an activity that was broadcast by local media last week. His absence had sparked rumours regarding possible infection with COVID-19.
Fellow citizens, it is with deep regret that I inform you that today, on the 17th of March 2021, at 6 p.m., we lost our brave leader, the President of the Republic of Tanzania, Honorable John Pombe Joseph Magufuli, who has died of a heart condition at the Msera Hospital in Dar es Salaam, where he was being treated. On the 14th of March, he fell unwell, and he was rushed to Masena Hospital, where he continued with his treatment under supervision of doctors from Kikewe Cardiac Hospital until his demise. Funeral arrangements are being made, and you will be notified. Our country shall be in a mourning period of 14 days, and the flag shall fly at half-mast.
Lebanon's President Michel Aoun on Wednesday urged Prime Minister-designate Said Hariri to quickly form a government or step aside as the country's economic crisis deepens. Lebanon's deeply divided political class has failed to agree on a new cabinet since a massive explosion in Beirut port last August that killed more than 200 people and led to the government's resignation. The country is in the midst of its worst economic crisis since the 1975 to 1990 civil war. The Lebanese pound has lost almost 90% of its value on the black market. On Wednesday, protesters briefly tried to storm the Economy Ministry to denounce the explosion in commodity prices. In the United States, 2 jurors have been dropped from the murder trial of former police officer Derek Chauvin due to doubts over their impartiality. Hennepin County Judge Peter Cahill on Wednesday dismissed the jurors who'd been seated for the trial of the former Minneapolis police officer accused of George Floyd's murder in the wake of an announcement by the Minneapolis City Council that it had reached a civil settlement of $27 million with the Floyd family. Chauvin's attorney, Eric Nelson, requested the recall, leading Judge Cahill to question the approved 7 jurors about their knowledge regarding the settlement. 5 of them said they would set that information aside while serving, but 2 admitted it affected their ability to assure Chauvin of his constitutional right to be presumed innocent during the course of the trial.
Hard to be impartial in this case.
Hundreds of Zulu mourners gathered to pay their respects at the funeral of King Goodwill Zwelithini, monarch of South Africa's largest ethnic group. King Zwelithini was the longest-serving monarch in Zulu history, reigning for half a century through years of apartheid and democratic transition. He died early on Friday in the eastern city of Durban, aged 72, after weeks of treatment for a diabetes-related illness. His remains have been taken back to his birthplace, the small southeastern town of Nongoma in KwaZulu province, where he'll be laid to rest after midnight. The intimate ceremony, to be conducted behind closed doors, is referred to as a planting rather than a burial. And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.